and welcome to Inside the Artist Studio. I am here with my dear friend, Kevin Weckbach. How are you, Kevin?
Good.
How's
How you
Santa
doing?
Fe? How's Santa Fe treating you?
Love it. Love Santa
Yeah.
Fe.
Yeah, so you're a Denver native, born and raised, right? And
I
trans
am.
yeah, why Santa Fe? I mean, obviously you love Santa Fe, but
I love Santa Fe. Yeah, I've been coming down to Santa Fe since I was in my young 20s.
mhm.
It's always kind of remained a second home. And then just the cost of Denver increasing. I think that had a little bit to do with it.
Mhm.
Although Santa Fe is not very cheap either.
Right.
So that was the exact reason. Uh,
Yeah.
a lot of it had to come down to like a change of scenery.
Mhm.
Um, Coming down to Santa Fe, not knowing a whole lot of people, couple people, but I don't have my group really.
Yeah.
I felt that I could, maybe rather than trying to redefine myself, it's more of like allowing myself to be who I am a little bit more clearly. And I know
Oh,
that was a big part of it.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. It's because without these people who have defined you in a sense,
Yeah, where I've allowed myself to be defined in a certain way.
yeah. What has
Coming
that
down
done?
here,
Mm, Go ahead.
coming down here is allowed for that because I
Mhm.
can sort of introduce myself the way that it feels right for myself.
How has that changed your work, do you think, or not?
I'm not really all that sure. I know that coming down here, for whatever reason, I can't pinpoint. I do feel more excuse me, more confident in my work,
Oh,
and I feel like my work has gotten stronger. Maybe that's part of it, having a
interesting.
little bit more of that confidence.
I can see that. And it's a funny thing because I think people who don't know an artist can't really say, oh, this work has become more confident necessarily. But I want to screen share the work that we're getting for this upcoming show. And
Sure.
I do like with that in the back of my mind, it's kind of interesting that there is a confidence, especially this first one I want to share. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and do a screen share. The first piece that we're going to take a look at is hang on, and I'm going to screen share. I'm going to screen share several things here. The first one we are looking at is called Hot Dogs. Um, this one, okay, this is my little bias on watercolor. I think it's
Mhm.
incredibly difficult because like you put something down and you're committed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you put it down, it's down.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so this watercolor, holy smokes, like when you really look at this piece, it's so vibrant. There's just so many strong brushstrokes in here that you committed to.
Hmm.
And so I'm wondering, talk about this piece a little bit for me.
Sure. Well, the over the course of the summer is when I painted this, and
Mhm.
I decided that this summer's project was going to be watercolors.
Mm.
And this particular one, I decided to keep it as a sort of a pure watercolor, meaning that I'm not using any gouache or any other mixed media with it. So the white you see is basically paper white.
Wow.
And the scenery, actually, they did a sketch of it earlier, and the actual scenery's taken in the photograph for it, because I work from references, was taken in the middle of the day.
Oh.
And I decided I was working from a sketch, and you can kind of see I've gridded it out.
Hmm.
So I gridded this out working from a sketch that was real small. And initially I was going to make it a daylight, And then it felt like, to me, it felt more natural to have it at night.
Wow.
And there's something about the warmth of the hot dog stand, and maybe even the smell of the hot dogs. It just feels like it's more of a night scene.
Yeah.
So I converted it to a night scene.
Wow.
And
Wow.
that was an intentional thing. That was something I just wanted to also see what I could do. Changing something intentionally. It was from a day scene to a night scene.
Where was this street scene?
This is in New York City.
Ah,
So,
okay.
obviously, I don't want to paint on location because everybody's moving.
Yeah.
You get
Yeah.
knocked over if you sitting there too long.
Wow.
So, I do work from references for that reason. But yeah, it
So,
was in New York City several years ago is when
mhm.
I did this, and I did the sketch several years ago, and rediscovered the sketch in one of my notepads and thought, well, I should make that one larger.
Wow. Okay, wait. So this is an interesting thing to me that I'd love for you to just touch on is, so you have sketchbooks, and I think
Yeah.
I've seen a number of your sketchbooks that so sketching, is that kind of a way of you remembering or recalling or thinking through or deciding?
I'm not sure. So it kind of is. It's a way for me to tap into something on more of an intuitive note.
Oh.
You know, it's trying to step away from being, too thought provoking in the work and
Hmm.
allowing things just to become more natural.
What do you mean too thought provoking?
Maybe it's not thought provoking, but it's overthinking.
Overthinking,
Probably
yeah.
is
Yeah.
probably a better way of talking about it.
Which then would lead to overworking a piece, I
So
would.
overworking it or having a piece turned looking a little bit more contrived, a little static,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
like something like this. I felt it was very successful, even though I was working from the sketch. There's a lot of intuitive stuff going on in this little piece here.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
can kind of see that there's a lot of wet on wet technique with the watercolor.
Mhm.
Don't want to get too technical with that, but you can see where some of the watercolor is bleeding and other have sharper edges.
Like kind of here,
Yeah,
these are, but even in here, right? Down here and
correct.
yeah.
Yep.
And then coming back with a few defining strokes.
Yes, coming back in there and redefining some of that stuff, or
Mhm.
just getting a little bit more definition in there.
Mhm.
Um,
Wow.
was really trying to get the glow of that stand too. They can see like the glow behind the paper and things like that.
Yeah. And there are a few like highlighted spots too, but this is really the biggest white expanse of paper that you've left for us.
Correct. Yeah, and that's about pure white right there. That's about paper white,
And
which
this is
gives it a
another,
real hot look.
yeah, it does,
Yeah,
really hot. And this is kind of one of those things that you have to protect that space, because once it's covered, it's covered.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
You
remember
think about
seeing
watercolor.
yeah, I remember seeing an exhibit of Andrew Wyeth's work in Brandywine, at the Brandywine Museum, I think. And
Mhm.
there was a huge watercolor of a boy stepping into a pond and like the pool of water inside like a cave. So it was
Yeah,
darks, just all these darks. And there was a highlight on the pool of water. When you got closer to it, the paper was torn out.
yeah.
I was like, wow. I guess you get it any way you can, right?
You really do. I mean that I generally I don't paint this way in watercolor. Generally I paint more like how Wyeth does. If I want to like get back to pure white, I'll grip at the paper or throw
Uh,
in gouache or do something else.
mhm.
Andrew Wyeth did it and so did Sargent. So I figured that, I might as well as well. This is one of my two favorite watercolors.
Right. Well, and I guess I mean, if you're a slave to, oh no, this is the purist,
Yeah,
versus I need to get this image across. I need to get this statement out there,
correct.
which is more important.
Yeah, to getting the statement out there is definitely more important. Like this one watercolor was more like a with quote unquote traditional style painting for watercolor. where you leave the whites as paper. I figured if this doesn't work, I'll just throw it away.
Yeah.
You know,
Is there like
it's too contrived.
after
What's
this
that?
conversation, would you let me know where your trash can bins are?
Yes, sure.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm going to close this window and get us on to another painting that we're getting 5 paintings in all from you, which is I'm just ecstatic about.
Good.
So yellow dress. This one to me is just one of those fun minimalist pieces where they're just these dots of color. And so to contrast the watercolor where you commit to those lines, in a sense, you commit to these pieces as well because you're not pushing and pulling into them, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. I mean, like, this is an oil, so you can correct as long as you like with an oil.
Yeah.
Um, but the placement, you're talking about the placement of those colors. What I'm trying to do is give a movement to color.
Yeah.
So the eye is attracted by color. And I was reading something about that, how the human eye works and the biology behind it. And reading about how, animals in the animal world work with color.
Uh-huh.
And how we're similar in a lot of ways and still very different. I mean, we're
Mhm.
unique to our own species. It gave me thought about, how we, just like a bird would fly, through the atmosphere and find like a sunflower with all these colors in it that we can't see, but is attracted to it, or a butterfly might be. But
Mhm.
we're attracted to color too.
Yep.
And, I thought it was a kind of a fun thing to play with this arrangement. And being in the city, especially with like New York City and Times Square, which is where this reference came from, you get all these colors around here. But you also got this beautiful grayness of the concrete and the
Yeah.
steel and the glass. So it's almost like there's a symbolism between how we are as species and how we interact with each other and see things. So that was sort of my take on it.
Wow. So now I'm seeing this as if you're asking me to be a bumblebee.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's just wonderful. It's really wonderful. And it's a great way to see a scene and it's in essence kind of dissect, an everyday scene into its barest little color flecks.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Wow.
That's what I find so beautiful when I go to New York City and Times
Mhm.
Square specifically. It's just seeing all these specks of color everywhere against all this grayness. I think it's just beautiful.
Okay, I think you're one of the only people on the planet who would make that comment about Times Square.
Probably.
Quite
It is
possible.
chaotic there.
Yeah, yeah, very chaotic there. Okay, so I'm going to go on. Okay. Loud silence. I wish I'd saved this one for the last, but here it is
Yeah.
up. Here it is coming at us. So loud silence. This is 50 by 60.
Yep.
And is this one oil or mixed media?
This one is oil.
Oil, okay.
Yep.
Talk to us about this one. And really I'm seeing such a theme with this new body of work. One, confidence of brushstroke, confidence of color and design and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Talk to
this one, I started it in 2018.
Oh, wow.
And I've been working on it for like, at least 5 years on and off basis, but, pretty much an ongoing basis. Would move things around in it, change the scenery, change where the break of the wave is and where some placements of some rocks are, the ripples and the foam in the water. So I just keep changing and manipulating things until I felt like the design was there.
Wow.
Is one aspect of it. But also, I'm not sure why exactly paint so long, other than I'm finding when your viewer gets up close to it, you can see all these beautiful little specks of other colors
Mm.
that are kind of hidden. The scenery itself, initially was taken from Laguna Beach. That's
Oh.
where I first started this painting from a reference from Laguna Beach in California.
Mhm.
And then over times of modifying it, I actually lost the image a long time ago. I have no idea where the image is. So I had to find a new image. And so I found an image from uh, the Baja of California down in Mexico.
Yeah.
So I started working with the design from the other image with some rocks and some different breaks in the water from down by Cabo,
Mhm.
Mexico.
Mhm.
And then there was some cliffs there to upper left-hand side that was in Laguna Beach, but since I lost that reference, I didn't have a reference for the cliffs anymore. So I painted that scene from New Mexico.
Really?
So it's a mixture of different locations.
Wow.
And it's a mixture of locations from different time periods over that 5 years. And to me, it feels like it's sort of been this journey that I've been going through over the 5 years. And it's become more of like a personal kind of statement for
It
myself.
sounds, yeah, it sounds autobiographical.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it kind of is.
Wow. 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 So you will be part of our panel coming up in a couple weeks, mid-December. And you can find all this stuff on the Art Soul website and Gallery 1261 website. And we will record the conversation, so it'll live on in a podcast. So if you miss it, if you can't make it to Denver, but Kevin's going to be on that. And you know, it's all about naturalism. We're going to be talking
Mhm.
about that. And so I think I love what's happening here because one, we've got city scenes, um,
Mhm.
which generally, when you're considered a naturalist painter, and I don't think
Yeah,
people really put that label on you necessarily.
sure.
Um, but you know, human, we're part of this nature. Um, and,
Exactly.
and so also talking about, you know, what does that term mean? And here's a great painting that anybody could walk up to and go, I've been there.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's off
Yeah.
the coast of Maine,
Yeah.
you know,
Exactly.
right? And no,
Yeah.
it's off the coast of Albuquerque, actually.
But actually, come to think, there is one the bottom section that actually is from Maine.
Oh, okay. So there you go, right?
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think as an artist, what I'm looking forward to this conversation with the panelists and you being a part of that, talking about, well, what is naturalism in art?
Hmm.
You know, um,
Yeah. Yeah. To
because
me, it felt like, yeah, I mean, you're right. It's like, even though I'm incorporating the cityscapes, I was thinking about that, how that is still part of it.
right.
And I've got a lot of things that maybe I don't really have time for right now to discuss, but I might at the panel
Yeah.
have time to discuss about a lot of
Yeah.
philosophy and whatnot.
That's exactly what I'm hoping for because I think I think all of these opportunities, one, to look at art, but two, to listen to artists talk about and ask questions of artists, help expand our understanding of not only what artists are doing, but my hope is that people can see the art, internalize it, and then go back out there and see the world in
Yeah.
with new eyes.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, this one I cannot wait to see in person. So that's all of these, of course. Okay, To the Theater. This is a smaller oil painting.
Mhm.
Is this one 12 by 12? Is that what I'm remembering?
It is. Yeah.
Okay.
So I got
Oh.
a big glare on the paint on the photo reference, but it is
Well,
great.
You know what? You're gonna have to come see it in person.
You just have to see it in person. Yeah.
You have to see it in person. This is another one of those. Okay, and I'm seeing this is an oil, but it sort of has this sense of that it was painted in the style of a watercolor.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right.
Yeah,
That's exactly what I was trying to do.
really.
Yeah. Thinner paint quality. I was using a medium that is, more transparent, turns the oil a little bit more transparency. So I
Nice.
was kind of almost treating it like a watercolor.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah. So
Very
you
nice.
got it.
Yeah. And to the theater, is this part of your New York?
It is.
Yeah.
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 And that's the other thing is that I think with like just us as species, we're social people.
Mhm.
We're social creatures,
Yeah.
and you find that in the animal kingdom too.
Of course.
How
Yeah.
we're really not different that way. But we're different, of course, because we've created this infrastructure of like a city and going to the theater and having a play put on and all that. So of course, it's a human kind of interaction,
Right.
but still no different than say some lion out in the prairie. You know, they still need that the companionship.
Yeah.
And that's why I've got this one figure. She's turned around looking at her companion, so
Mhm.
that there's a sort of a contact, a sense of contact between people.
Yeah. And I think these are great pieces also to have in a show. I hadn't thought about it before, but exactly what you're saying, and I think there's so much conversation about us being isolated on our phones, and
Yeah,
put this big spotlight on how isolated,
yeah,
and what happens to people when we're isolated from each other and human
yeah.
interaction.
Oh yeah. That was heavy. That was hard.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
a very difficult time.
Hmm.
We can't live on an island alone. And that point's proven.
Yeah, right. Right. And yet I think we just keep kind of having to learn that, maybe. I don't know.
We do. And there was another thing about this painting. There was a
Oh,
book. I don't know if I'm running out of time here, but there was a book that
okay.
I read by oh, Vernon Lee, who was the art critic, during Sargent's time. She was also a friend of Sargent.
Uh-huh.
And she wrote a book on, it was called something about gardening. It has nothing to do with gardening. And she wrote about the theater. And this is sort of a take on her philosophy, is that the theater itself, the act wasn't important. It was everything leading up to it. So like walking to the theater and that interaction between people is what I remember
D-
about going to not the play itself.
What, who's the author again?
Vernon Lee,
Mm.
she there's a portrait that Sargent did of her.
Oh, okay.
Pretty famous. A quick little sketch, like a half hour, just a knockout painting.
Wow. Wow.
But
Okay,
she's just a terrific writer and beautiful, like philosopher and poet.
I'm gonna look her up.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, she's one of my
Like,
favorites.
obviously, I have an issue with books. This is just a small portion of my books.
Well, yeah, here too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, okay, finally, we have Where the Whales Come.
Yeah.
This one's mixed media. So
And
tell
this
me
one's
about.
mixed media.
Mhm.
Yeah, this one initially was going to be a watercolor, and then I felt like it just needed more weight to it,
Mhm.
more of an impasto feel. So
Mhm.
started adding pastel to it, and then after that, I started adding some acrylic paint to it.
Huh.
So it's a mixture of mostly watercolor, but there's definitely some pastel and acrylic.
I just saw this. Is this a big whalebone?
Yes, it is. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's This is another one of those things that came from several different sceneries. The rock itself is actually from the East Coast, but I don't think there's any whales out there. And the whale bones come from Cabo. As
Really?
I go out to Cabo every now and then to visit friends, but we go with my girlfriend, Sarah. We both go out there,
Mm-hmm.
and we go out there when the whales are moving
Migrating.
up and down and migrating and actually giving birth
Oh,
inside the
mm,
inside the sea there.
yep.
You watch all that, and then this is sort of that interaction that the whales are coming there to create life.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also death. So that's what the sort of the the vertebrae represents.
Right.
That sort of cycle that's there.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Oh, you always just blow my mind with what you come up with. This is wonderful. You,
Thanks.
and this is the part of these conversations with artists that I always so enjoy, because we get the inside track on where your mind was and what went into the work. And I
Sure.
love that. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And just on a pure surface level too, I mean, you see all these little pops of color in there. Was that the
Yeah.
pastel?
No, well, a lot of that is actually the watercolor.
Oh, it
There's
is.
a couple of pastels. There's some reds in there that actually are more of a Conte. Um, but most of the colors that you see are watercolor.
Mm.
The pastel I used was like a titanium buff white, some grays,
Oh,
and I was just doing that just for texture and layers.
I'm also a fan of seeing your underlying marks. So I'm like kind of
Yeah,
along here
and I try to leave a lot of that.
and in here,
Yeah,
the thought process. I really enjoy that. And I think watercolor is one of those really fun mediums where an artist shows us the stages.
yeah, it is. I mean, Wyeth does it all the time in his work. He doesn't erase any of that, and it becomes part of it. It's part of the movement and the
Yeah,
freedom. When I talked about something feeling more contrived, would be something where you don't see any of that.
right.
Where you can kind of see some of that chaos, but there's still a lot of that nice structure that's involved with it too.
Right.
To me, some of those lines and the gestures or the drips that you see in there is part of that
Yeah.
chaos, and I think that's how we experience life too. Is I mean, obviously we kind of experience a lot of the chaos during COVID.
Yeah.
So we want order too. So we're thirsty for both.
Yeah.
I think good art has that.
Yeah. It has
I try to represent that in my paintings.
yeah, the order and the mess.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Well, Kevin, I really appreciate you taking some time out today to be with
Yes.
me and talk
Thank
about
you,
this.
Rose.
And yeah. So we will see you in December. The show goes up here next week.
Mhm.
So I'm talking to you on December 1st.
Yep.
If people are watching this down the road in 2023. And so we're going to get Kevin's work in town. And the show's going to be up, and I hope people seeing this will come visit the show, come to the panel talk. And if you've missed this, it's going to live on YouTube and be in our podcast channel and all that good stuff. So
All right.
anyway, Kevin, thank you so much. And
Thank you very much.
I will look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks.
Sounds good.
All right. Take good care.
You too. Bye.